Hello and welcome to the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore's podcast channel. With over 15,000 downloads since launch, we are excited to bring you Season 4 featuring in-depth content on business, global affairs and news across Singapore, ASEAN and the United Kingdom. We've had some extraordinary guests on our channel, including W Series driver Abby Eaton.
I've got thoughts for the future now. I'd love to try and kind of mentor some of the younger drivers,
Renowned UK international education champion, Professor Sir Steve Smith.
Over about a 4-year period, we kept increasing the resources going into mental health provision.
Chief Executive and Director of the London Design Museum, Tim Marlowe.
The way we design is actually thinking about the needs of everyone.
And CEO of the Industry Cluster Group at JTC, Alvin Tan.
If you look at PDD, we are creating an ecosystem of companies, government agencies and industry associations in the digital space.
Thank you, as always, for your continued support, and I hope you enjoy this podcast.
Welcome to the latest episode of Marketing Movers and Shakers, a podcast series by the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore's Marketing and Communications Committee, featuring some of Singapore and Asia's most inspiring marketers and communicators working in the industry today. In this series, we learn what makes our guests tick, what their professional journey has been so far, their predictions for the future of the marketing and communications sector in Asia, and what advice would they give to ambitious marketers and communicators who are just starting out. I'm your host, Suzy Goulding, the chair of the committee and also a member of the Chamber Board. And today we're chatting with Nicki Houghton, Regional Marketing Director, Asia Pacific at Collinson, a global leader in loyalty and benefits and traveller experiences. A strategic communicator and people manager with almost 15 years experience in global luxury consumer, corporate travel and customer loyalty organisations. Nikki is skilled in delivering B2B2C marketing initiatives through cross-functional collaboration. In her role as Regional Marketing Director, Nikki oversees lead generation and brand awareness initiatives from communications and PR to digital campaigns. With a career rooted in marketing communications, Nikki is skilled in securing live broadcast interviews with the likes of BBC World News, Bloomberg and CNBC, briefing executive subject matter experts on key messaging and delivery strategies, as well as managing embargoed or sensitive corporate communications and crisis communications. Welcome, Nikki. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Suzy. Good to be here.
Great. Let's kick off. So what I'd first like to ask you is, in 3 words, maybe give us an insight into your work personality and how that's reflected in your leadership style.
Yeah, okay. So I would definitely say the main word I would focus on is collaborative. So my favourite moments, particularly at Collinson, are getting together a team of experts and brainstorming around a solution so that we leverage each other's experience and knowledge. And I'd say this is reflected in my leadership style because I like to encourage my team to feel empowered, bring new thoughts to the table, and also to work in a way that suits them. They're the experts in their fields. They're the ones that are closest to their daily roles. And so I trust them to make the right decisions. And in turn, I help guide and course correct and provide the required direction linked into our global and regional strategies here.
Lovely. And you do get so much out of having a collaborative style of leadership, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I think that's the way that you get the best responses and answers really to a problem. You bring together, there's that saying, 2 heads are better than 1. I think if you bring together a group of experts, you bring in all these different pieces of knowledge, of the pieces of the puzzle that you can pull together into that bigger picture and ultimately find the right way forwards.
Absolutely. And how did you get started in marketing?
So whilst I was at Loughborough University, completing a master's in English Lit and Lang, as much as I was really enjoying my degree, I was fully aware that it wasn't, as people used to say, it's not vocational. So, what are you going to do in your career? What's your next step? So a lot of people assumed that if you do English, you would become a teacher, which now I really like the thought of. But when I was younger, I just didn't see myself in that role. So just in my final year of uni, I started to join in at the publishing and marketing lectures And this really gave me that vocational angle. So it led me to securing a job at Oxford University Press, which is the publishing department of the university. So I absolutely loved it. I mean, living in Oxford was amazing. It's beautiful. And as an English grad, just being able to see the people working on the Oxford English Dictionary was just mind blowing. And also working for the publishing house that had produced many of the books that I'd studied. It was just a really great entry point into my career.
It sounds amazing. And it's funny, isn't it? I did a similar degree. I did a social sciences degree, and like you, then sort of struggled with, what does this look like as a vocation? Where do I take this? You know, I knew I loved reading and writing, but where did I go from there? So it's a dilemma that I really sympathise with.
Yeah, and I encourage anyone in a similar position to discuss it with your uni or wherever you're studying, because you know those lectures that they allowed me to join, it was just free of charge. They just allowed me and recognized that ambition and desire to learn, and were very, very kind at just allowing me to sit in on some of those additional lectures. So yeah, always ask the question if it's a positive outcome that you're looking for. I'm sure someone will support you.
Good advice. And so here you are now, in Singapore at Collinson. What was the career path that led you to this role?
Yep. So after Oxford Uni Press, I went back to Hertfordshire and London to work for CWT, which is the largest business travel management company globally. So I learned a huge amount here working with significant global brands. I started in the UK and Ireland team, moved to the Europe, Middle East and Africa team, and then finally into a global position. And this was really where I learned my specialism within marketing, as marketing communications. So around 2016, I moved to Hong Kong, and I stayed with the company for another year. They were really kind to support that move, but it was a remote move, and I was trying to make a role work that was better placed in London, to be honest. So the working hours were very challenging. So I moved over to a company called Peninsula, which is a global luxury hospitality brand. And this allowed me to be based in an office, to feel a bit more embedded within the local market. And it saw me managing PR and communications for that brand. So following 2 years with Penn, moved over to Collinson. My current company is, I started there as head of marketing communications for Asia Pacific. And then around 2.5 years later, I was promoted into my current role, which is regional marketing director, which I've been enjoying for the last 6 to 7 months.
Excellent. And how did you find moving from London to Hong Kong?
Oh, wow. It was, the first few months, I think, were both exciting and shocking at the same time culturally. My heart is still in Hong Kong. I'm really enjoying Singapore, but I think when someone's your home for 5.5 years and, you build those friendships that when you live abroad, they become like family. So it was such an amazing experience, and it's definitely something that I would recommend to anyone who has the opportunity to live abroad. You make so many more different friendships that you learn so much more about humanity and different cultures, even just different foods. You have the opportunity to travel to nearby countries. Personally or professionally, it's certainly something that I would recommend.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And I think in terms of building confidence in yourself, it's a really great thing to do, because it does take a certain amount of bravery to move to the other side of the world, and to deal with all of those sort of culture shocks that you've mentioned. And Hong Kong is a little bit more sort of culturally out there than Singapore is. I think Singapore's a relatively easy move to make for a aspiring expat. But Hong Kong is something else entirely, and you hear a lot of people who prefer one or the other. You're either very firmly in Hong Kong, whether you still live there or not, or you're very firmly in Singapore. I hear that quite a lot from fellow expats.
Yeah, I heard that a lot when I lived in Hong Kong, and they're often compared to each other. Having lived in both, I'm quite surprised at how different they are. Actually, they do have very different personalities, and setups and different positives to the two of them. So there's definitely pluses to living in both. Very lucky to be able to experience both.
Great. And over the sort of all of your career, have there been any standout highs and equally important lows? And what have you learned from these experiences?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the highs. So I'm lucky enough to have had some career points where I've had to pinch myself. I mean, when I was with my previous company, we secured a brand collaboration with Bentley for a press trip. And flash forward a few months after much planning, I found myself driving a Bentley Continental along Route 1 in California through Big Sur, sat next to the editor of a luxury magazine. I can't remember, I think it was either Vogue or Tatler China. We saw whales, dolphins, experienced a hot air balloon ride. And I couldn't believe that was work. But of course it is, because you're building relationships with media, you're getting coverage for the brand. And we had influencers there as well. So it was elevating the brand to position it as that luxury lifestyle experience. We also had a film crew with us, so we got it all on camera. It was just one of those moments in life that I'll never forget. So it made all the hard planning worth it. More recently, I think with Collinson, the highs have been, ironically, during the pandemic, where we were able to secure live broadcast interviews with the likes of BBC World News, Bloomberg, CNBC, and that was all around Collinson helping to get the world traveling safely again. So, it was such a fantastic experience and pulling together those key messages. But we really, we knew that they were resonating and actually helping to make a difference, the work that we were doing around, from COVID-19 testing all the way through to bringing governments and other bodies together to help reopen borders in a safe manner. Really, really exciting to have worked on that with the team here. So career lows, these are definitely the things I've learned the most from. So as much as sometimes when I reflect, I cringe, I'm also glad that I made those mistakes, because now not only do I know how to avoid them, I can also help guide my team to avoid them. And I anticipate I'll make a load more mistakes in my future career, but you've just got to, as much as you can, avoid them, but accept that they will happen. And just the main thing to do is put them right. I think that's where the thing that will make you or break you is, okay, something's gone wrong. What can you do to improve it or make it right or stop it from happening again? As long as you can have that mindset, then I think you could just put any mistakes behind you, learn from them, and just swiftly move on to the next task.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's when you make mistakes or you fail at something that you learn the most. And I think, having managed a lot of teams myself over my career, that's where you can be of most use to your team, because helping them, I find, particularly in the sectors that we work in PR and comms, it can be quite stressful, and more junior members of the team who have less experience can sometimes take those periods to heart, and get really worried if a piece of coverage doesn't make it or it doesn't come out the way you thought it would. And when you're there with experience behind you, you can reassure them, it's not the end of the world. Nobody died. It's not a disaster, because they will feel like it's a disaster for them. So, and you're right, it doesn't matter how senior you get or how experienced you get. We all keep on making mistakes. And I think part of maturity is having a level of comfort with that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So during and through your career journey, have there been any special mentors or bosses who really inspired you?
Yeah, I've been really lucky to work with some great colleagues and leaders, and they've had a huge impact on the way I work today. So I can't name them all here. I'd like to start by mentioning my Marcom colleagues, so marketing communication colleagues across all of the organizations that I've worked in, particularly CWT. It's just such a great community, and actually through LinkedIn, but also just private relationships, it's just, we all stay in contact with each other. We all still support each other. And if someone's looking for a job or a new recruit or something along those lines, we all get together and see how we can help. because marketing communications can be a bit of a high pressure job when you think that you might be doing live broadcast support or a crisis communication. So I think you bond quite well with your colleagues. You all go through something at some point in time. So that community has just been invaluable. So I'd like to thank that group. And then leaders like Kelly Kuhn, whilst I was at CWT, and then also currently Todd Hancock, who's our president for Asia Pacific at Collinson. These type of leaders are skilled at bringing the right people together to reach a solution. They're not afraid to ask others' opinions. In fact, they actively aim to give people a voice and then leverage this collective guidance and insight to decide that path forward. So just that way of approach, it empowers people. Some of the ways of working I mentioned earlier, actually, some of those words come directly from Kelly. So, the empowerment of people being closest to their roles and knowing their roles best. So I still keep those learnings today with my own team.
I think very wise, because no one person ever has all the answers, right? And you never know where the right answer is going to come from. And I love that you call out your team and everyone that you've worked for, not just the senior people that you've worked for, because as you rightly said, it all comes down to collaboration and working together to reach a solution.
Absolutely.
And what do you think is next for marketers over the next few years?
Into the future and also today, I think reporting on marketing ROI, so return on investment, is a major topic. Personally, for me, it's more about proving marketing's value to the business and taking that next step towards ensuring that we're viewed as that strategic business partner versus a cost center. Actually, it's less for me about using it to ask for more marketing budget, though of course that helps too.
Always useful.
Yeah, always useful. And it's more showing that marketing supports works hard to try and support all stages of the customer journey, and showing that by placing a monetary value against it versus what's traditionally been a purely last touch acquisition approach, which almost can exclude or minimize all the upfront work and ongoing work being done to support. And the reason this is important is because, again, taking that collaborative approach, it's not realistic that each department hands off at different points in time. Actually, for the most successful outcome, you continue to work together. In the background, marketing continues to nurture. Sales are having those conversations at the same time that business solutions are coming in and building out those next steps for that customer to protect and grow that account. So then you think about account-based marketing, and it's not always about the new business. It's making sure you're protecting and looking after your existing customers. So marketing can play a role across that whole process. So yes, marketing ROI, I think it's still a very big challenge to get your arms across everything that we do. But we're beginning to get there with a new dashboard that we set up, at least with tracking our campaigns and putting a value against those. So that's really exciting for us.
Yeah, it sounds it, and I think digitization and technology are giving us the ability to be more data led to some degree. Although I always think that marketing and comms does come down to people, and that's still that personal connection. So you can't do it by data alone, but certainly it makes our job a lot more simple.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, Suzy. We've not to plug Collinson too much, but we manage a lot of loyalty programs globally and customer engagement. And one of the key topics that we've seen come through is, yes, AI, machine learning, everything that's going on with marketing automation, it's absolutely fundamental. But you also need to match it with that human touch, with that consultative approach, and make sure that everything that you do is working as one ecosystem. So yeah, what you just said can completely resonate with us.
Yeah, my thoughts are I think we're going to see a return to more sort of personal values around things like marketing and communications. I can see a backlash against things like bots, chat bots, that very impersonal approach to customer engagement, customer service, where, you just really want to speak to a human sometimes, and how difficult that is to now do. You know, it's very difficult for you to just pick up the phone and speak to somebody who knows what they're talking about. But I can see that, you know, as we move forward, that there will be more of a return to that way of working, particularly probably in luxury, where, you know, your customer expects more for their book. But let's see.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, which is that personalization element. So, you know, using data, brands will begin to better understand what it is their individual customers want. And as such, they can communicate with them in the way that that customer wants them to communicate with them. So it's data is fundamental, and understanding that data will be absolutely key to then being able to deliver the experience that your individual customers want. So it's really interesting. Yeah, and it's a really cool topic that I love to help get the thoughts of our SMEs out there on.
Great. And with all of this change going on in our industry, how do you stay up to date with skills?
Yeah, so well, first and foremost, I'm a member of both the Marketing Society and also our British Chambers of Commerce and American Chambers of Commerce as well in the region. Todd, our regional president, is heading up the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. So as an organization, we really see the benefit of being and getting yourselves involved in the chambers and societies. And as such, I'm part of the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore's marketing committee, hence this podcast today. And I really find it helpful to keep up to speed on trends, skills, best practice through these organizations. And then I also find it really important to build a strong team that can bring in new skills to the table. You know, we have a new campaign marketing manager, and she's helped us really improve our approach to drip campaigns. Another one of our team has brought in new ways of thinking around account-based marketing. So learning goes both ways. You know, you never stop learning, I don't think, and shouldn't be afraid to learn either from your team members.
Absolutely. And going back to, you know, the culture of collaboration that you've created at Collinson will pay off dividends with that, because bringing in people who have skills that you don't have, you know, is also a much quicker and more efficient way of exploring some of the new approaches to marketing and communications that we're seeing happening, rather than you trying to be a master of everything.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, I think there's always something, it seems like every week there's something new, a new trend happening within the marketing and communications industry. So how do you stay on top and anticipate what might be coming around the corner for the industry?
Yeah, so I'm loving the return of in-person events. I think they're just so great at learning about new trends, you know, networking, hearing what people are experiencing. I also read a lot of news stories and articles, particularly OAGs. We're a company whose DNA are rooted in the travel industry. So a lot of what we read is around the travel industry and supporting that travel ecosystem. And then we also conduct a lot of our own research. Either, you know, it's usually with third-party research, so it's anonymous. So we get those really in-depth data points that we can then analyze and find the trends through that as well. Because a lot of our content is research-based. So whether it's on the customer engagement side or moving through to different elements, more specific elements of what we offer. So yeah, that's tend to be how I stay aware of upcoming trends.
And the travel industry alone, right, has been through such a tumultuous time, and due to the pandemic, so lots of changes there to stay on top of, and very interesting to see where it's headed. You know, we've all witnessed sort of high flight prices, not a lot of availability for some flights, particularly if you're an expat trying to get back to the UK, has been difficult over the last year or so. So it'd be really interesting to see where the travel industry goes in the next couple of years.
Yeah, oh my goodness, it's what a 2 to 3 years we've all had, particularly working in the travel industry, and then add on that layer of being an expat as well, as you mentioned, and trying to get back to see family. And this Christmas will be my first Christmas in 2 years that I'll be home spending it with family. So yeah, and even now the ramped up travel prices don't make travel easy. But I'm going to quote Todd here, which is, we were first in, last out from the pandemic in Asia Pacific. So, and some markets, of course, if you look at China, they still have relatively strict travel restrictions in place to still protect. Hong Kong has their traffic light health system. But mostly, if you look at the region, it's reopened. We're seeing in India that there's I think they're almost at recovery, if not over recovery, particularly from domestic standpoint. They're more than 2019 levels. So it's quite amazing, really, to see how things have bounced back. If you cast your mind back 2 years ago, it was very worrying. No one really knew what was going to happen. So really happy that we're now in this position. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And what are your go-to blogs or podcasts that you listen to or read that help to sort of shape your day-to-day role?
So I tend to follow business leaders, coach style profiles on Instagram. There is such a wealth of positive profiles that you can follow on Instagram. I know social media gets a bad rep sometimes, but it's, there's certainly a lot of, I think, positive ways that you could leverage that channel and other social channels and blogs. So yeah, that's my go-to when it comes to new ways of thinking and also just general business and news updates. I find that really helpful channel, just integrated with my day-to-day updates. So I always make sure that I'm getting that news straight into my day-to-day lifestyle.
Great. And what tips would you give to young marketers just starting out in the industry?
Yeah, so I had a thought about this one. I would say put yourself out there. So by that I mean network, and where it makes sense to have a voice. Where you want to have a voice, have a voice. Don't make yourself feel uncomfortable. But the more that you're exposed to leaders and different ways of working, I think the quicker that you'll learn and pick up new ways of thinking that ultimately will help you better understand your own skill set and the type of leader that you might one day wish to be. So, I go back to recommending that you join societies, chambers of commerce, and you can usually do this through your workplace. But also look for courses that help build your skills. So my previous role, I was able to join a Google Squared digital marketing course. And that really helped me better understand an area of the business that wasn't my specialism. So yeah, it's always good to keep an eye out and look for areas that you think, okay, I'm intrigued in that. I want to learn more. So see whether there's opportunities. And then another thing to look for is whether there's a mentor program within your organization that will allow you to learn from a senior colleague who typically isn't your boss. So then you get two channels of insight from a senior leader. And then finally, if you get the chance to travel, either personally or through work, take it. Because my experience, I think the experience and memories that you'll gain will be invaluable.
Very sage advice there. And I couldn't agree more about putting yourself out there. I find a lot of young people now are nervous and anxious about doing that, but it really is vital. And particularly if you are based here in Singapore, it's very easy. It's a small country. It's very easy to get out there and network, and there are lots of opportunities to do that. And people are very gracious and generous with their time, and usually happy to introduce you to someone else that they think might be able to help you. So it's definitely worth doing, and really just sort of getting over that hurdle of anxiety to get out there and meet new people. You'll reap the benefits of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think everyone's been in your position at some point or another and can relate to it. So yeah, everyone is, in my experience, has been so supportive and willing to help and engage and network. So it's really been great. So yeah, definitely something I'd encourage.
Great. And if we were to go back 15 or so years to your younger self, what career advice would you give yourself?
So back to that point earlier, I think accept that you will make mistakes. And while it might feel like the world is ending at the time, they're not as big a deal as you think they are. Just take whatever lesson you can, learn from them and move on swiftly. And then also remember that work is one part of your life. So don't sacrifice family time or other truly important things in life on a regular basis, as you may find that you could regret that when it's too late. So Just, I think, get that strong work-life balance going. That's really important. And then finally, try and be yourself. I was told more than once, actually, earlier on in my career that I'm too nice. So, I needed to be, I don't know, I don't exactly know what they're expecting me to do, but honestly, I don't believe that you have to be harsh, rude, unapproachable in order to be a manager. I just, or to progress. I believe actually that showing people respect, building strong working connections, that's how you get the most from people, the most from your team, and the most from networking and, adding value. So I guess my advice would be, if you're in a situation where you feel constantly pressured or even bullied, because that does happen in the workplace sometimes, unfortunately, have the confidence to seek support, and also never put anything above your own well-being and mental health. So take your career seriously, put effort in, be ambitious, but don't let it overwhelm you or take over that strong work-life balance that we should all try and achieve. And I'm still trying to achieve that, but yeah,
yes,
keep it in mind.
Ongoing battle, isn't it? And I couldn't agree more with that point around just be yourself. You do not have to be an unpleasant person to get ahead. And I think as women, we're quite often sort of told that we're too nice, we're too friendly, we're too, we don't have enough of the sort of killer instinct that apparently you need to get ahead. And certainly that's not been my experience in my career. And it's just sad that people are still being told that. I think it is getting better, but there is still an element of that, and I see that a lot, particularly in our industry. From people who should know better.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think personally, it's just a relatively old-fashioned way of management. Actually, is having that harshness to you, and your barriers up, and I just don't see how it can build. I'm definitely more carrot than stick, put it that way. But
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Great. So finally, as you're still quite new to Singapore, what have you already uncovered, and what are you looking forward to uncovering in this city?
Yeah, so as we've mentioned, I was in Hong Kong for 5.5 years before moving here in May. So I've been here about 7 months, and so far I'm really, really enjoying it. It's absolutely beautiful. The architecture is amazing. And I feel like Singapore is also a great place to be if you're into your food, which I am. So linked to the awesome mix of different cultures here, there's also naturally a great array of cuisines. So I'm looking forward to experiencing more restaurants. The hawker markets out here are a dream. And then, I love also how easy it is to travel from Singapore. Changi Airport is so efficient. So I'm looking forward to uncovering new locations in Asia and just beyond, now that travel is back in our fabulous region.
Absolutely. Hooray for that. And yes, I could probably live in Changi Airport. It's so nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki, for joining us today. So Nicki Houghton from Collinson's, thank you.
Thanks very much, Suzy. Cheers.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore's podcast channel. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, and why not leave us a rating and review on Spotify, Apple, Google, and the other podcast platforms. For more information about the Chamber, please visit our website at www.britcham.org.sg and tune in next time for a brand new episode.